this is the last session of the main conclave, and we have the session now, Innovate to Impact, Unleasing Potential and Driving Change Through New Hubs. So I'll request Dr. Sujata Chaklanobis, Scientist G and the head of CRTDH, to come on stage for chairing this session. Thank you.
A very good morning to everyone. We are in the final session of this conclave, final technical session. And the topic of this session is very interesting. We are basically going to talk about innovation. It's Innovate to Impact, Unleashing Potential and Driving Change Through New Hubs. In fact, there are 2-3 ways by which we say that something new is coming up. The first one is Jugaad, about which Professor Rajat Muna talked at length yesterday and gave his perspective about why Jugaad may not be so good to take it forward. The one thing what he said about was about the quality. And the second thing what I feel about Jugaad is economy of scale. That is also very important. Unless and until you have economy of scale, that thing will not go very far off. The second thing is innovating in incremental manner. In very small steps you go forward. That makes impact to some extent, but what shakes the world is disruptive innovation. There are some good examples of disruptive innovation in the service sector in India, but not anything great in the technology sector. There are, in the service sector, if you say, I would say that the first time the Reliance Mobile came and they just changed the entire world, or I would say the country, by putting up very low-cost mobiles and internet connection. Everyone was having a mobile phone, right from a rickshaw puller to the biggest man. So that is one thing which is innovation in the service sector. When we talk about technology, it is all very, very important that we try to innovate not only in incremental manner, but also in disruptive manner, so that something new, something very remarkable comes in the market. Now that we have established the CRTDH and we are celebrating 10 years of its existence, in my speech yesterday, I had underlined the point that now it's time for the CRTDH to look forward to the new technologies, new methods of working in the CRTDH and promoting that to the MSMEs. Industry 4.0 is a buzzword, but there are many publications from big consulting firms who have made reports or prepared reports about the readiness level of countries. So probably we are still not up to that level that the MSMEs absorb the 9 verticals or the 9 pillars of Industry 4.0. A couple of them may be absorbed by them, but that too not too in a big way. But of course not the 9 ones. I'm not talking about the big companies like Bharat Forge. They have an excellence center and they are working in a big way. Baba Kalyani is very much into promoting this. Then Tech Mahindra is one which is having, which is undertaking these technologies of Industry 4.0 in a big way, but not the MSMEs. I don't find, many MSMEs who are coming forward to absorb these technologies. So having this session in this conclave is really important, and we have with us a very distinguished person today who would deliver the keynote address, and thank you, Dr. Shri Hiranmay Mahanta, who is the CEO of iHub Ahmedabad. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation. He's a very renowned personality, and Mr. Hiranmay Mahanta is the CEO of the Gujarat Student Startup and Innovation Hub. iHub is a catalyst in creating a more robust startup ecosystem across the state with its cohesive approach to inculcating entrepreneurial spirit in the youth across 104 universities. As the CEO, he plays a vital role in driving the vision and strategic initiatives of the organization. He oversees the organization's operations, identifies and nurtures innovative startups, forges partnerships with industry leaders, and promotes Gujarat as a vibrant hub for technology and entrepreneurship. His strategic guidance and efforts are instrumental in positioning iHub Gujarat as a key player in India's startup ecosystem. Through his leadership, iHub Gujarat continues to contribute to the development of a vibrant and inclusive innovation ecosystem in Gujarat, attracting talent, investment, and fostering a culture of entrepreneurship. His passion lies in fostering inclusive innovation ecosystem, engaging youth, academia, industry, and other stakeholders to build sustainable, innovation-driven enterprises. He is contributing his expertise and energy to enhance and scale up the startup and innovation ecosystem across Gujarat and beyond. He has been a key resource in developing various sectoral and regional innovation ecosystem development involving multiple stakeholders. He has contributed for over a decade to GTU Innovation Council as a founding director of the organization. He actively contributed to developing the National Innovation and Startup Policy through the Ministry of Education, Government of India. He is involved in the AICTE's Startup Policy Implementation Committee and contributes to making national strategies to take the innovation and student startup movement across 10,000 plus colleges affiliated with AICTE across all states. He is also a member of Global Shaper Community, an initiative of the World Economic Forum. So we are honored to have you, Mr. Mahanta, with us. We look forward to your speech. Thank you. Please come.
Thank you, ma'am, for this wonderful introduction. How much time I have? 10 minutes. Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Chinmay. Thank you, DSIR and the entire team for getting us here on behalf of Government of Gujarat. So I welcome you on behalf of the state government and congratulate DSIR for this wonderful program today here. And the theme of the session in which we are talking today about impact creation through innovation, it's so close to us. Let me tell you, there are two important facets we need to take care. One is there are a lot of policies, there are a lot of institutions, there are a lot of support systems who try to promote excellence. And there are a lot of other programs, other initiatives, other systems who try to promote relevance. And one of the very great challenge for policymakers like us is to how do we bring in excellence and relevance together. And I think that's the beginning point for how much we can make sure that our R&D and innovation reaches to the impact level. And why I say so, because we run a very open program in the Government of Gujarat, in which every year we write to the secretaries of our 17 departments, and we get 10 problem statements from them, which we call as the combination of excellence and relevance together. And then what we do, we have 7,500 odd startups in the state of Gujarat. Of course, as many of you know, we have been the best performing state in the country by DPIIT in past 3 years. So what we do is we bring in these problem areas and try to see that can our best brains work on them. And this has been the practice since last 4-5 years. And one very important thing that we learned is more often than not, when the problem solvers see there is an impact visibility of the innovation happening, they give an extra effort to solve the problem. So I think this approach of making sure that the innovator who is solving the problem, if he sees the value getting disseminated on the ground, making some impact, That's really makes a lot of sense. So, in fact, we famously call our program called Mind to Market, because ultimately there is something idea happening in the brain, it need to go to market, but not necessarily market means the financial aspect of market. Sometimes it is the social and relevance factor of the society. And I will be happy to mention here that we have supported around 7,000 innovations in last 6 years through our initiative at iHub and the Government of Gujarat, out of which over 40% of them are impact driven. So around 40% of them are impact centric. And how do I define impact? So impact could be three things, right? The first thing could be, it could be impact also. The second thing could be impact only. The third thing could be impact first, right? So let me again paraphrase it. Impact also, impact only, and impact first. And I see that most of our innovators and startups who are working with us, they fall in the category of impact first. And that's a very, very new model India is giving to the world, that most of these people are looking for value for many rather than value for money. And there's also a very new economics that we are proposing to the world, that we are trying to see that what kind of tech. So it's not only the technology being the enabler of problem solving, but how that problem solving also can unleash value on the ground. So this is a very, very determinant factor. And one very important factor, ma'am, I will mention while we are supporting this thing. My colleagues told that 22% of these teams of innovators and startups that supported by us has at least one woman founder. And that's a very interesting thing to look at. Because when we are talking about an inclusive society, we must have a strong participation. Like we are talking about SME and startups. And that was a very great factor of getting gender inclusivity in the problem solving space. Not in the beneficiary space, in the problem solving space, they are very strongly participating into this thing. And that was the reason when last year Vande Bharat was launched between Gandhinagar and Ahmedabad station. Honorable Prime Minister requested to get women innovators and startup to travel with him. And that was a point to make that, our society really cares about an inclusive process of getting it done. So one very important factor that we learned in the government, how do we really involve SME and startups? So as I told, impact also, impact fast, and impact only. There is one thing that we learned when we work with the young innovators on the ground. And that was what they need actually to create maximum impact, right? Because ultimately there is a runway in which they need to fly from idea to impact. And what are the bottlenecks? What are the death valley that comes into it? And we figure out that the first death valley is, I can put it in two aspects. The first could be 3M and then second could be 3 I's. The first is 3 M's. Let's take it off. The first M is mentorship. Because many often we realize that despite the innovator has the capability to solve the problem, if they are not exposed or immersed at the right problem, many often their talent get wasted. Either the problem get off track or the solution doesn't impact. So right mentorship in the beginning to tell them that this is the problem to solve is also an important part of the ecosystem, which we are very strongly doing. So when I told about that every department is giving us problem statement, we take our researchers, innovators, entrepreneurs, we do an immersive on-ground detailing on the ground to understand what exactly is the problem that we are trying to solve, and then how do we solve it, right? That comes later on. So first aim is all about mentorship. How do you find the right problem? How do you articulate the right problem? How do you make sure that the problem is oriented towards the impact? The second aim comes is kind of money, right? Like DSIR has been a great support in terms of supporting deep tech startups through various programs. One thing that we realize that, of course, money is also divided into two parts. Either it is a grant capital or it is a risk capital. Risk capital, of course, is not going to flow to your doorstep till you don't show the product into the market phase. So that means we as a nation, we as a state has to do a lot of fill up in the process of grant capital till the risk capital comes in, right? And hence, I am happy to mention that Gujarat government has allocated around 2,000 crores of public taxpayer money in supporting the idea to product journey of the impact journey. Because till you don't show a product on the table, till you don't show an MVP on the table, no private equity, no venture capital, no angel investor is going to write you checks. So that is one gap that we realize, that while mentorship is being solved by giving them right problem, The money part we are trying to address in two parts. One is broadly about the grant capital and then risk capital. So what we are doing is, one way we are bringing in the taxpayers' grant capital money for idea to product development, and then we are also collaborating with a dozen savvy venture funds to see that these products goes to market in an equity and other support system. The third aim in this journey is, suppose we enable them in your journey of idea to impact. You have now the problem ready, you have a mentor ready, you have a little bit of money ready. But ultimately, one of the problems that we are really struggling and we are trying to solve is we are a reluctant buyer from our innovators as a nation, as a state. And we are trying to solve that, by the way, seriously. It's a critical feedback for me and others. If we don't buy from our own innovators and our own startups, then of course they will never get a local market, right? And of course, India as a domestic consumption ecosystem, we need to buy from our own innovators, buy from our startups. So one thing that we are doing is, can we help the market creation part of the innovation? Because suppose there are certain things available on the table, and if we don't give a preferential buying out from our local innovators, SMEs and startups, of course, it will be a little bit of hypocrisy at that place, that we help them to find a problem, we help them to give some money, but when they are coming to cater our need, we don't give them a priority. And that is the reason we have a priority public procurement policy now, in which we are saying, okay, if you have an innovation that you have developed by solving the state's problem, we will give you a priority. Not only priority in terms of buying from you, but also priority in terms of giving you a lieu. So we call it as so initially, when we talk to the startups, many of these startups have a problem. Because in a typical tendering process, they cannot reach out to us. And of course, the turnover criteria, the experience criteria, and all these things, the SMEs and startups face a really, really big challenge. So the problem statement that we thought in the system would be, how do we move from the method of L1 to a method of I1? So L1 is lowest price, I1 is highest innovation. So if you draw a curve between price and innovation, this is something that contrasting to our public procurement strategy, right? So we give a preference to, okay, you are catering to your specifications, needs, you give a lower price, we buy from you. But there is no factor of I1 into it. So this is a problem that we are trying to solve when I talk about the third aim, the market. So the mentorship, the money and the market that we are trying to solve in one side in the journey of idea to impact. The second thing that we talked about is, how do we do this? Because these are frameworks, these are processes. So here we need about 3 I's. The first I is, of course, incentives. Because incentive not only for the innovator, incentive for even the ecosystem which promote innovations. For example, IIT is doing a lot of work. And if we don't create incentive for platforms, the platforms will lose motivation at some point of time. So we designed that, can we create an incentive structure for every stakeholder in the ecosystem so that the process of idea to impact doesn't get hindered. So that therein we are giving financial incentive, citation incentives, lot many more. Just to give an example of how citation incentive works, we introduced something called startup gold medals in all our universities, ma'am, in the state. We have 109 universities. We have introduced something called startup gold medals. So what does it mean? Is, suppose there is a boy from IIT chemical department, is graduating with a top score, you give him a medal, right? Bronze, gold, all these medals that you give. What we have decided in the state, and this is being operational, if you are an innovator and you are creating jobs, you are creating direct jobs, you are creating revenues and solving India's problem, despite your score, there is a benchmark. We also give medals on the convocation ceremony in all universities. So that means the incentives might be financial, incentive might be non-financial, it might be citation. And this creates a very parallel ecosystem that innovator matters, right? So I remember last year, while a 10-pointer was getting a gold medal, also a 6.5-pointer was getting a gold medal because he created a 2 crore company in Gujarat Technical University and 30 jobs before he getting graduated, right? So we are creating a different league of incentive system altogether. So that's the first I part. The second I is, of course, incentive will work, but then you need infrastructure. If you don't have these facilities, incentives will go vapor, right? So we need to create a lot of innovation centers, incubators, accelerators, early stage funds. All these things need to be put in place. So what we decided is, by now, 51 universities in the state have set up their incubation centers with support from the state government. Now we intend to make these institutional support systems across all universities. So we have 109 universities, around 16 are public, rest are sectoral. So we are trying to see that, okay, we need to build infrastructures. And when we mean by infrastructure, not necessarily buildings and digital infrastructure, it also needs a lot of soft infrastructure support. And soft infrastructure consists of the culture building. Because sometimes in society, if your neighbor doesn't appreciate that you are being an innovator to impact, that hinders you much more than what you have in the lab or not, right? So the perception factor of the social infrastructure is very important that we are doing in, and hence our Honorable CM invites even parents of the innovators and startups to his residence in a program called At Home, in which we appreciate them to allow their kids to be risk taker and innovators so that they can make impact in life. So that's the institutional factor. The third infrastructure factor. The third one, which I come to the last, is the institutions. So incentives, infrastructures, and institutions. Because many often in public system, doing good once is okay. But doing good daily and doing good often is necessary, right? And that cannot happen without policies. That cannot happen without institutional framework. And to enable all these things, enable these mind, market, and mentorship, enable these infrastructure and institutions, platforms like iHub came in pictures. Because there is a central agency in the state whose primary job is to create the ecosystem at multiple layers, both at horizontal inclusion of the sectors, genders, geography, and regions, also in the vertical space of what niche area of innovation you are doing in. That is what iHub is trying to do. So in that sense, iHub is a broad umbrella organization which is trying to support innovations and at multiple layers by giving in incentives and support system, by policy measures. And I'm happy to mention that Gujarat is the only state where 5 departments have their innovation and startup policies. In many, more often than not, it is one department in other state governments which drives that. Maybe Department of Industry, Science and Technology or something like around. But here we have decided that if we need to support startups and innovation, we have to behave like a startup and innovation organization. And that is the reason almost every unit in the government behaves like an innovation promoting organization. Of course, DSIR has been championed by showing us the way. And just to sum up, one very important thing that we learned in the process of idea to impact journey of supporting them is not necessarily the innovator will hit the nail in the first attempt. And many often the burden of him bringing the impact in the first attempt actually creates a lot of trouble. We need to appreciate that they might fail. We need to appreciate that. We need to put a cost of failure. And we need to also appreciate that that cost of failure need to be factored into our systematic process. So if I talk about the 500 startups that we supported at iHub, most of them become a successful company in their second and third attempt. Being the first attempt success and impact, there might be 10% or 15%. So looking at this data, and probably this is the national average also, if we know that they are going to create the maximum impact in second and third attempt, somebody should factor in their first attempt failure also. And this is called fund of failures, or fund to fail, fund to learn. And this is the reason Gujarat government in a student startup innovation policy has allocated 500 crore of money for tinkering, ideation, experimentation, because then only you learn how to innovate, right? So we have factored in the fun to fail and fun to learn. So fun to fail, of course, will not come in a very lucrative way, but fun to learn is also very important when you design the financial incentive for the innovation support system. Because if we put the burden of every of our idea being supported, being with the first attempt being a successful innovation and startups, that might not happen. So we realized that, of course, we had few young boys and girls coming from nearby colleges who have become unicorns. By the way, Professor Chinmay, we had 3 unicorns came from colleges, never before in any part of this country. They are all below 30-year-old young boys. But that's an exceptional case where there are brilliant minds trying to solve some problems. And here is one point that I want to leave before I finish this conversation is we have talked about a lot about creating money and creating the financial unicorns. Probably we need to also have a debate and dialogue about creating impact unicorns. Because we as a nation has been giving a more priority on solving India's problem, creating value. By now, most of the unicorns, I mean, of course, I will not say generalize it, but many of the unicorns have followed a Western business model and trying to fit it into India's market need, India's problem needs. But having said that, we have ample amount of problem which we can solve and create value, which the whole world can look into. So rather than West to East movement of innovation pedagogy, can we have an East to West movement of innovation pedagogy? And globally, it can be possible. But that needs a lot of synthetic integration of how can we inspire our best brain solving India's worst problems. And we have ample amount of worst problems to solve. And the scale of the problems are so humongous that if you have a problem solution fit in Indian context, you will hit that level of scale. But this narrative need to be talked about. This narrative need to be fit into the policy incentive structures also. And I'm sure with support of DSIR and all other ecosystem players, enabling organization. We are going to see a great journey happening. We have 100,000 startups by now in India. In last 8 years, this will become 1 million in next 5 years. Look at the more scale growth. And by that time, we'll have around more than 100, that will be around $1,000 billion privately held company. But one critical thing would be how many of them are oriented towards unique India's problem, how many of them are involving deep technology to solve India's problem, and how many of them are creating a model here which is being looked outside to scale up. That will also be a matrix to look at that what we gave in the startup movement. Of course, we are the third largest startup economy in the world. We will become second in next 5 years. But not only in numbers and numeric aspect of being second, but can you also be numero one in terms of giving new models of innovation and entrepreneurship? I think that's going to be a great thing. Thank you so much for giving an opportunity today.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mahanta. Such a beautiful address. I think all of us have, gained something or the other. So, in your address, you talked about the model which is being followed by iHub, about the startups, how they solve the problem, and innovators solving the problem. You talked about the mind-to-market model, which I would say is the phrase which was coined by Dr. R.A. Mashelkar, who is the former secretary and former DG of CSIR, former secretary DSIR, and former DG CSIR. So that was one thing which we also follow at DSIR. We have schemes in the Ministry of Science and Technology which helps an idea which originates in someone's mind, and that can be taken up to the commercialization level. We have schemes from mind to prototype to pre-commercialization to commercialization. Not everything in DSIR, but of course in the Ministry of Science and Technology. So you talked that you have, iHub has supported about 7,000 innovations in the last 6 years, and 40% of them are impact-centric. I think that's a very beautiful term, what you have talked about. Impact-centric is something one should really look into, because just creating something is not important. It should have impact on the societal need also. You talked about impact first also. This is again something very interesting to hear. I would like to go back and read more about it. Then one thing what you talked about is, gender equality, about gender inclusivity in problem solving. I think that's a great thing you are trying to do, because the United Nations has, given 17 sustainable development goals, and we are also, India is also trying to achieve all of them. One being gender equality. And if you're talking about, gender-sensitive problem-solving things, that's something very encouraging. And being a female, I'm more excited about it. So that's also something really good you talked about. And you said that we need just not to support the innovations, but we need to create market for the innovations also. This is also something very important. In our department, the projects what we support, we have a program called TDUPW, where we support such kind of projects. We ensure that we create market linkages at the end of the project. That's very important, and something which really needs to be looked into. So again, you talked about developing social infrastructure and fun to fail and fun to learn. This is quite interesting, and I have also been saying, because in the government you are assigned targets. If you are spending some money on R&D, you are asked that if a project fails, that how could you give this project to them? A project which fails. We get questions, we are questioned about that. So I have been insisting in the department, and I believe it very firmly, that research is not always 2 + 2 = 4. 2 + 2 can be 10, or 2 + 2 can be 0. So, you know, there's a big probability that something fails. I always say we need to celebrate our achievements, but we need to learn more from our failures. So thank you very much, Mr. Mahanta, for this wonderful address.